We're going to finish the year looking at a couple of things with the priesthood. One of those being today a question that I get a lot, and I think that hopefully will be helpful for you, trying to save the things that are more relevant to you or questions that you may have for the end here. Today we're going to talk about celibacy, why priests don't have sex, and what's going on with that, why those who are religious, brothers and sisters, what is celibacy, why does the church ask it of priests and religious people, brothers and sisters, why do we have it? Okay, we're going to talk about next class married women ordinations, why the church doesn't ordain women as priests, so that should be lots of fun. Interesting, hopefully good discussion, chance to answer any questions that you may have on that topic. Okay, the last week, then the next week we'll talk just a little bit about religious life. We have one day we're going to watch Oprah. Okay, Oprah. Last year, Oprah had on a couple of nuns, and Lisa Ling, I think is her name. She spent the night in a up in Michigan with some Dominican sisters. So we'll watch that and talk a little bit about religious life. Okay? And then there will be a test to wrap up the year. And then after that, we will have a party or something. Yes. Just not today. What's that? Luis wants an exorcism. For yourself, or you want to see one? Either way. Okay, good. Okay, so you have a sheet here. You have a sheet to fill out as we go through. You don't need anything else out on your desk. You don't need other classes. You don't need... Yes? You did not. Okay, see me about it. Okay, all right. Let's check Edline then. I am missing... I was surprised at the number of essays by John Paul... Listen up, please. The summaries of the John Paul II priesthood summary. I was surprised how many people didn't hand that in. Is anyone else's... Hannah says hers is missing. Did anyone else hand that in and not get it back?
I'm like 98% positive.
Okay, to the sub. But you got everything else back? What's that? Yes. Did you get yours back today? Did you hand it in to Mr. Whalen? Did you get it back today? So you just didn't hand it in. So that was the... Did you hand in the thing about John Paul II?
I think I handed everything but...
Okay, well then that would be why you wouldn't have a grade. No, I know. I'm saying, did anybody else hand it in but not get it back today? Hannah and Justine. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's review really quickly here what we did the last two classes, okay, in the gym and so forth. Can someone describe to me what the Jewish priesthood was like? Just bloody, okay? Yeah? Why bloody? They were sacrificing all the time, right? Animals, all different kinds of animals, all the time. What's that? Fiery? Why was it fiery? They were burning a lot of fat and a lot of animal parts as sacrifices to God. What were those sacrifices for? For sin, for us, for not just sin, sometimes to... What did Mary offer her turtle doves for? Yeah, to purify. She had to purify herself. You know, so a lot of times if you did something that was unclean, you had to offer animals to sacrifice, okay? But this bloody, all right, very good. I'm glad you thought of that quickly. What was the temple like? Can someone kind of describe to me what the temple was like? Sam.
It's big.
Okay, it is big, yes.
Just like off the Hercules.
Like off of Hercules. Okay, good. Anyone else? Jonathan? Two separate rooms. What are the rooms about?
The one in the back is for the high priest.
The one in the back is only for the high priest. How often?
Once a year.
Once a year. What's in that room? The Ark of the Covenant. Yep. God is present there. Okay. Had a really thick curtain. What happened to the curtain? It ripped when? When Jesus died. Very good. Okay, so that's the temple. All right. Now this is the important thing. What does that have to do with what Christ did on the cross? What does what we did those 2 days, talking about the Jewish priesthood, what does that have to do with what Christ did on the cross?
They didn't sacrifice.
Offering up animals is like offering up Jesus, so he was sacrificed just like the animals.
He was sacrificed just like the animals. Very good.
He was the sacrifice and the high priest.
He was both the sacrifice and the high priest. Very good. He was what was offered, and he was the offerer. Okay? Very important. Very good. What else? He's the ultimate sacrifice, right? Exactly, because he hadn't sinned. Right? Okay, very good. You guys did a good job with this. Very impressed. What does that have to do with the Catholic priesthood then? Yeah.
Like sacrifice in a way like Jesus did, or like not literally. Or actually, is it literally almost like standing up for the faith?
Yeah, we all, in a way, we mirror what he did. Not just priests, but all people are called to mirror that sacrifice, right? To do that sacrifice with their lives, give of themselves, right? Even to the point of blood shed if need be, right? Good. What else does it have to do, though, in a literal way with what the priest does?
During the Eucharist, he recreates the sacrifice by speaking in the first person and offering up
Oh,
the Eucharist as like his God.
very good. So the priest stands in the place of Christ in which role? As the victim or as the offerer of the victim? The offerer. Okay? He stands there and offers up the body of Christ. Right? The victim. Yeah.
I thought that he was acting like as the victim, except he wouldn't actually give up his life.
Elaborate a little bit. He is the priest?
Yeah.
Yes, the priest is victim, but like when we look at it, I guess yes, you're exactly right. Priest is victim as well. But when we watch the drama of the Mass unfold, it looks that we see two different roles when we look at it from afar. We see a person up there.
So we see like him offering,
Off.
but he's also acting as something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay? So the priest, the Catholic priest in the Mass is supposed to be the person offering up Christ. So that can only be Christ doing that. So that, in that sense, in that moment, when you see a priest doing that, that priest is standing in the place of Christ. He, in a way, is Christ in that moment. After Mass, you all know me. You have me in class. Okay? I have moods. I have days. I'm not perfect. You know that. But in the Mass, that's where... So people are always like, are you Jesus? Like, you know, like if they haven't been to Catholic school, like, so what's the priest? Are you like Christ? Or... No. In the Mass, I stand in place and Christ is present in a weird way through me. But the priest there is there, just like the Old Testament priest, offering up the victim, who is Christ, and there we go. Okay? For Jewish people that would see the Mass, they would be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. But we don't know the roots, so it doesn't make any sense to us, and most of us don't care enough to find out, because Mass is boring, or we think Mass is boring. Okay? There we go. Very good. You guys did a very good job with that. I'm glad that sunk in. That'll be on the test. Okay, so today we're talking about celibacy. Why on earth would someone be celibate? Okay, that's the question we're asking ourselves. Why do you think the church has her priests and brothers and sisters, which we haven't talked about yet, but why does the church ask people to practice celibacy? What do you think? Thoughts? Justine?
Isn't it because priesthood is a vocation and marriage is also a vocation? So when you take up the priesthood, you give up the ability to be married, which is also giving up the ability to have sex.
Okay, two different vocations. Okay? So kind of a practical, like an argument for like I can't raise a family and be a pastor, kind of an argument, you think?
I
Or
mean, I don't see why you couldn't, but in the eyes of the church, you can't.
okay. Okay. So two different vocations. Very good. Other ideas? Rod?
Is it like because Jesus was like celibate?
Okay, because Jesus was celibate. Very good. Part of it for sure. Eric, what do you think? All righty. Anyone else? Yes.
When you enter the priesthood, you're marrying the church.
Marrying the church. Very good. Priests marry the church. That's true. They do that. Yep. Okay. Any others? All right. We'll see if we learn any of that. What is the standard line about celibacy and the priesthood in the church? You have a box on there that you need to fill this with this in with this. In your own words, okay? The standard idea about celibacy is that it happened around the year 1000 or so, that the church made celibacy part of the priesthood around the year 1000 or so. And that in the early church, it wasn't the case. You just write that in there, however you want to. That around a year 1000 or so, which always seems to be the number people pick when they're making broad generalizations about history. That's like the standard year for the Middle Ages, right? That started around the year 1000. Okay, so around the year 1000 or whatever, celibacy becomes something that people do, that priests do, and that in the early church it was not the case. Got it? That's the standard line. That maybe you haven't heard that yet, but maybe you just once you get into history class or whatever, meet somebody who, yeah. Okay, if you can wait, that would be great. About ready to throw up? Oh, okay. All right.
What's the difference between, like, why can other religions be married?
Why can't other religions be married? Which other religions?
Why can't Baptist pastors be married?
They can. They can, yeah. Because, again, we'll get into that more, but they don't agree with the church's reasoning for having priests be celibate. Okay? And the whole idea of the priesthood is not something that Protestant brothers and sisters share with the Catholic Church. They don't think if you go to a Baptist service, the Baptist minister is not standing in the person of Christ, offering up Christ in the Eucharist. The Eucharist is just a symbol for many non-Catholics. So the whole idea of what the priesthood is totally different too. Okay? A lot of times in most non-Catholic services, you're looking at somebody who would basically be kind of facilitating a prayer experience as the leader, if that makes sense. Okay? Yeah, good question. All right. Are there any married priests? This is important. Are there any married priests? Yes. A, you can have been married before you became a priest, as long as marriage ended in an annulment or death, and all of your children are over the age of 18. So there are priests out there who got an annulment or got their wife passed away. All their children are over the age of 18, so they can become a priest and enter the seminary. You can't enter the seminary until your children turn 18. Okay, then they're no longer dependent on you, at least theoretically. Okay. B, you can come from Eastern Orthodox churches or Anglicanism. Their priests are married as Anglicans, okay? And if you convert, you can continue to be married. If you convert to the Catholic Church, if you're a priest, you're an Anglican, Kari is an Anglican or Episcopalian, and he is a married priest in that faith. If he converts to Catholicism, he and his family, then Kari can apply and become a priest in the Catholic Church, even though he's still married. There are those guys all throughout the United States. We have guys that are married that are Catholic priests, and their wives come to Mass. Okay, so, yeah.
Do they then not have to commit to celibacy?
They do not. They do not. We'll get into that, though. It's a good question. They do not have to commit to celibacy. And we'll talk about that more. Good question. C, even those faiths that Hannah was kind of talking about that don't share that understanding of priesthood, if you're a Protestant minister of any kind, so now Tyler is a Baptist minister in Tennessee, and he and his family convert to Catholicism, he can apply to Rome and ask to become a priest now in the Catholic faith. It's easier if you are already a priest in another religion, because like the Anglicans, Episcopalians share the Catholic understanding of the priesthood. So it's a lot easier to become a Catholic priest when you switch. But if you were a minister before, you can still become a priest. You just have to fill out, you just have to apply for that to Rome. Okay? I don't work in Rome, but my understanding is if you're in section B, it's pretty much like it's a done deal if you want. You can become a Catholic priest. If you're in C, you have to kind of apply for it. Okay? But that's the case as well. Throughout the United States, we have that situation happening. Okay? Questions on that? Yes, Justine.
When you talked about like the understanding of the Eastern Orthodox churches and Anglicanism, is that why they still have bishops and
Yes.
like all the titles are still the same?
Yes. And you'll get the title sometimes in those lesser in terms of how they view the priesthood. So, for example, you'll have sometimes Baptist minister in the Baptist tradition. You would still have some people call themselves bishops, but that's not so much like something that came from someone else. It's just some title, usually a title that they or a smaller group of people would give themselves, like because bishop is in the Bible. So you could go down the street maybe somewhere and you might find someone in town who calls themselves, like I think of a guy on TV, Bishop T.D. Jakes, if you've ever seen him. I believe he's Baptist, but that's just a title, I think, that he would even kind of consider that just a title that he and maybe other people felt that he deserved, if that makes sense. Okay? But yes, you're right.
So then what was the bishop that he give himself as a title? I mean,
I think... Go ahead.
I was wondering that too, because some, like, at my church we have some like preachers come visit and then they come preach. And there was one that came and they would call him bishop, and I'm like, why are you guys calling him bishop? Like, I don't understand why they would call him that.
Each individual who would not be coming from one of those in B, who's not Catholic bishop, Eastern Orthodox bishop, or Anglican bishop, those were all titles that you get bestowed on by your kind of the overarching religion. Okay? If you're not in one of those, but you're coming from some other group of Protestantism, then it's you'd have to ask the individual person who calls himself bishop where they got that title from. They may say, I just decided I've been doing this for 40 years and I'm going to call myself bishop. It may be that a group of local churches said that we want you to be our any number of ways that can happen if it doesn't come from your overall arching church. Questions? Good questions so far. All right. Celibacy in the Bible. You have on your handout there, you're going to summarize a couple of these passages. I'm going to look them up and read them to you. All right. We have the first one that we want to look at is 1 Timothy chapter 3. And these books are so small in the back here. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2 says this. Let's see. Oh, I'm like, that doesn't... Okay, I was reading the wrong spot. Therefore, a bishop must be irreproachable, married only once, temperate, self-controlled, decent, hospitable, and able to teach. So, in 1 Timothy 3, chapter 2, you need to write this down, at least at some point. That is a very controversial or important thing that we need to look at. St. Paul says a bishop must be married only once. That's the key phrase there. A bishop must be married only once. What's the instant question that we ask there? Why celibacy if St. Paul is saying a bishop must be married once? Only once. Okay? Good. We'll get there. All right, good question. Good thoughts. Let's go to 1 Corinthians. We have some different passages that we want to look at there. Okay, 1 Corinthians 7. The first one, chapter 7, verse 2, says this: Every man should have his own wife. Every man should have his own wife, and every woman her own husband. So however you want to summarize that, summarize it. Okay? Every man should have his own wife, every woman her own husband. Okay? All right. Let's skip Matthew, and we'll come back to Matthew in just a minute. Let's stay with 1 Corinthians 7, 32 to 33. I'll read it first, and then we'll look at how exactly we want to summarize this. St. Paul says this: I would like you to be free of anxieties. An unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, but a married man is anxious about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. I should like you to be free of anxieties. An unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, but a married man is anxious about the things of the world. Okay? So St. Paul there is saying, what? You're summarizing this sentence. 2 sentences. I should like you to be free of anxiety. An unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord. A married man is anxious about the things of the world. Okay? So he's saying, if you're not married, you are free to worry about what? God, the things of God. Very good. Okay? If you are married, what are you having to worry about? Your wife or your husband. Okay, very good. 38, let's look at that one real quick, the last one, and then we'll back to Matthew. So then, the one who marries does well. The one who does not marry will do better. The one who marries, and he actually says here his virgin, the one who marries his virgin does well. The one who does not marry her will do better. That's 1 Corinthians 7:38. The last passage. Okay, you don't have to write the whole thing down, but you'd better have the gist of it down, of each of those passages. If you marry, you do well. If you do not marry, you will do better. Alrighty. Let's go to Matthew 19. Chapter 19, verse 9 through 12. Here we go. Listen up. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. His disciples said to him, if that is the case of a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. We looked at that already when we were talking about annulments. Remember that? Do you guys remember that? He says, whoever divorces his wife, unless the marriage is unlawful, commits adultery. Do we remember that passage? If you get a divorce, and it's not an unlawful marriage that you're getting there, then you're committing adultery. So then his disciples are like, holy cow, that's insane. That's terribly difficult to live. How could you possibly say, if you get a divorce, that you're going to hell? Or you're committing adultery. Okay? His disciples say to him, then, freaking out, because they're like, that's so super intense and no one's ever said that before. His disciples say to him, if that is the case of a man with his wife, it's better not to marry. They're saying, look, if that's what you're going to say, then isn't it better to just never marry in the first place? Because that's so extremely difficult to live. He answered, "Not all can accept this word, but only those to whom it is granted. Some are incapable of marriage because they were born so. Some because they were made so by others. Some because they have renounced marriage for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Whoever can accept this ought to accept it." Let's figure this out real quick. Make sure that this is a very important passage. Matthew 19, 9 through 12. Jesus says, disciples are like, no one should marry. Why do they say no one should marry? Why aren't they like, well, gosh, no one should marry? That's insane. Why would they say that again? Kari, why do the disciples say that no one should marry?
Because it's hard not to divorce.
It's hard. Divorce is something that a lot of people, even in Jesus' time, apparently, given the disciples' reaction, even then, a lot of people are getting divorces. Okay? Jesus says, and the disciples say, shouldn't anyone marry? Jesus says, not all can accept this. Okay? And then he talks about there's 3 different types of people. Make sure you can kind of get this off to the side a little bit or whatever. Okay? There are 3, and the word sometimes that you hear associated with this is eunuch. Does anyone know what a eunuch is? It's mentioned in like the Pirates of the Caribbean, for example. Jack Sparrow says, "You're not a eunuch, are you?" To one of the soldiers. Man without a what? We're 18, we can say the word. Correct. Okay?
How are you a
Oh,
man? You don't.
You're still a man. Like that's what Jesus says.
Straight person?
Yeah, that's in here. Some are born this way.
I thought that meant like born not to be married.
That's what I thought it meant.
No. Okay. With his wife, he answered, not all can accept this word, but only those to whom it is granted. Some are incapable of marriage because they were born so. So what does it mean to be born a eunuch?
Born just not to be married.
Does it mean... Okay, look, we're getting now into Viagra commercials here. Okay. What does it mean to be born a eunuch? What do you think he's talking about? Do you think he's saying born without male genitalia?
Yeah.
He's not. It just doesn't work. Exactly. It doesn't work. So if you're born that way... Case 1, Jesus is saying you can be a eunuch because you're born that way. Lady Gaga. Not that she's a eunuch, but her song, Born... What's it called? Born That Way? Born This Way? Okay. All right? I'm sure that this is what she had in mind. You can be born a eunuch, which means that you are unable to be married. Again,